Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Q&A call for November 2022. Before I get started, I need to tell you this call might look a little different to you. It may be a little bit shorter. I might seem a little bit tired, and that is because we held the live Q&A call yesterday, and I forgot to hit record. So I am just going over the same questions that we went over yesterday in the live portion, and I am recording those this morning at 7 a.m., hoping to get this out to you, uploaded onto the membership and out to you as quickly as possible. So might be a little different, but I do have the list of questions and I will go over them. So before I go over all the questions, I want to just welcome our new members. So Lauren from the US joined us this month. So welcome, Lauren. I want to talk a little bit about what we added to the membership this month since our last Q&A call. So I added the affirmation, I achieve my goals. That is just to help you reinforce the work that you need to do and the mindset that you need to have to actually achieve your goals. The second thing I added was the training, increase your effectiveness with personality tests. And so gave a little bit of an overview about personality tests, talked a little bit about Katharine Briggs and Isabella Myers. Let's see, I think that, oh, sorry, I got that wrong. It is Katharine Myers and Isabella Briggs. It's a mother-daughter team that developed the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator. And so talked a little about them, talked about the personality indicator system, my views on the best ways to use it, and then gave you all an opportunity to take your personality assessment using a free website that's just out there and available for anyone. And then we made customized personality profiles and coaching profiles for each of the personality types. So if you go out to the website and take the assessment, then we've provided you with some tools that you can use to help you with your personality assessment. And I really hope that you take the time to grab that personality profile. And I have mine here. As I've mentioned, I'm an ISTJ. And one of the things in these profiles that my mom actually made for everyone, so I just wanted to thank her again, is it talks about common sources of stress and how to deal with stress. And I will tell you, it's right on the money for me. You know, I sometimes get really stressed when I'm offered non-specific advice or expectations. So when I don't clearly understand the parameters in which I am to work and to be successful, sometimes that can get me to have a little bit of anxiety. And so one of the things that it suggests that someone in that situation does, and that is something that I do, is to really think, okay, what's the worst that could happen? Really actually think about the worst case outcome. It is usually not that bad. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, if this is really the worst that can happen, if I kind of get something not quite right when things are unclear, it's a way to help me move forward. So there's tips about how to deal with stress. There's suggestions about keeping life in balance, and also some tips for specific, like if you have specific developmental needs that you've maybe gotten some feedback from coworkers or your supervisor about some things that you might need to work on. It gives you some tips for that. So that was the training that we put in. In the resources library, I put a copy of my leadership blueprint. Now, this is a free download that I put up on my website in an effort to try to attract more people into our membership, but I wanted you to have it too. So it summarizes my 3-pillar framework for success in the sciences and engineering. If you all have taken the Leadership Success Framework training, that's one of the first things I suggest you do. Then you're familiar with Prove Your Performance, Nurture Your Network, and Master Your Mindset. So I give a brief high-level overview of that, and I give one short exercise that I recommend people to do. So it's not going to be much new to you. The part that you might like and might be a useful resource to you is that I include links to all of my relevant blog posts and LinkedIn posts that are related to those different topics. So it can be a handy kind of directory of resources to up to date. So I continue to add new content on a weekly basis kind of everywhere, but it gives a nice summary of where things are as they stand right now. So you might find that useful. And then the other thing that we did is that in the forum section, I always give a weekly topic of the week, but I did ask you all to consider the hot wash technique in one of the forums. And I went through how I personally used the hot wash technique as a review, and I actually use my meditation retreat just as an example of how to go through each of those steps. So I really want you all to give that a try. That's going to be a common theme as we move through this program, is building in after action reviews, both with yourself, so you can check in with yourself and see how you're doing, but also with your teams. So you're building this culture of reflection, review, continuous learning. I'll share a story with one of the coaching clients who used that. And she said that prior to really having that methodology, they did after action reviews on a regular basis, but they always dissolved into just blaming and finger pointing because they didn't have a methodology in place. And so they would just say, what did you all think about, this production? In fact, I'm working right now with an artist who's in charge of some productions at Georgia Tech. And so, they would just have this free form discussion, and it would always result in finger pointing and yelling. And she's like, I don't even like to go to those things anymore. But now that we have this methodology, we are much more factual, and we're much more even-handed, because the methodology asks you to talk about what really went well and what are things that you might want to repeat, and then it asks you what are things you might want to take a look at. So it can help you to balance the successes and criticisms if you get into the habit of using that methodology. So that's something that we did in the forum. Okay, so now I'm going to move to answering the questions that I've gotten. So I've gotten some questions in advance, and if I recall, I don't think we got any. I have a list of questions here. If I recall, I don't think we actually got any questions during the live Q&A. Most folks were just listening, but I have a list of everything that we went over during the live call, and I'll just go over those now so that you all have them. Okay. So the first question is, how can I boost diversity hiring in my organization? So I get this question a lot. I think it's a top of mind for lots of folks. And so there's a two-part answer. The first thing that you really need to do is you need to think about the hiring journey. And what I mean by that is the steps that a potential prospect would go through, all the way from starting with finding your job description, all the way through to interviewing, and then potentially accepting a job offer. So if you think about their potential journey, you might find clues to where your organization can make some improvements. So where are the jobs being posted? Are they being posted through channels where the types of diversity that you're interested in look for things? So it may not just be LinkedIn, or maybe you use a search firm or something like that, but it's important to just understand where are your jobs being posted. So once somebody finds a job description, what are they likely to do? So they're likely to check your website. So what is on the website of your organization, and does it send the message that that different types of people would be welcome there, or not? So you can take a look at that. Then they're likely to reach out to people that they know that might have some relationship with your organization. So what is that likely to look like? What are people going to say about your organization? Do they have are you likely to get a warm referral or not? If the hiring manager is listed somehow, or once they learn who the hiring manager is, it may not be on the job description, but maybe, if they're asked to come in for an interview, what is your LinkedIn profile look like? Do you even have a LinkedIn profile? And then when they come to if they have an on-site interview, what are they going to see and who are they going to be greeted by when they come into, the building and the facility, and then the meeting rooms and things like that. So those are all things that can give you some clues as to whether or not you are being welcoming or not. I can tell you, I still today see job descriptions that are all written with male pronouns. And it's kind of like, are you kidding me? Like, really? 2022, we're still only looking, we're still giving the signal that we only want men in certain, science and engineering roles. And so that those kinds of details can be important. The other thing I do want to, though, caution you is not to try to overstate the current condition in your organization. And what I mean by that is by, for example, making PowerPoint slides that have a cover with all of these, diverse rainbow people when in fact your organization is not that way, because most, at least medium to large size organizations, their diversity metrics, their actual diversity metrics are inside of their annual reports, and therefore easily searchable with a Google search. And so if sort of wanting to understand the demographics of an organization is important to the candidate, and they look it up and see where it is, and then see your recruiting materials and they don't match, then that sends a red flag up to the potential candidate that these people are trying to, pull one over on them. So you need to be honest, but you also need to be intentional about what the journey may be. Then the second practice that can help boost diversity hiring is really paying attention to where your relationship building and networking as an organization are taking place. A lot of jobs are still based on referrals. And so it's important to build a network with organizations that represent the types of diversity that you're interested in. And so just as an example, I'll use my husband as an example of some activities that he's doing. And I wrote about it a little bit in my book, so I feel like I can, I feel like it's not a secret at all. And, he works at Oak Ridge National Lab, and they're interested in boosting their diversity and inclusion. And so one of the things that he's working on is trying to build relationships with Howard University, because they have strong scientists and engineering students there that are from underrepresented backgrounds, and that are doing, in some cases, research that's really well aligned with the research that's being done in the Oak Ridge National Lab organization. So there's not only this diversity pipeline fit that is a strategic goal for the National Lab, but there is a technical and experience fit with the types of research that's going on. And so ORNL decided, okay, that could be a good thing for us to pursue, to build long-standing relationships with Howard through internships, through funding, through hiring, through all these other, mechanisms that organizations use to build relationships. And then once you do that and you start to have some transfer, you'll find, okay, now we do have people in the organization who can make those warm referrals, and it builds and builds. So that's a longer term strategy, but an important one. And, I know for myself that I joined Alcoa while I was still in undergrad, because Alcoa was basically embedded in Penn State. Tons of the graduates went to work at Alcoa, either in the operations or in the research center, which is where I started. Alcoa was spending a lot of time sending people over, taking us out to dinner and things like that, which is actually how I met the person who eventually hired me. And so there are these relationships that still, that need to be built, and that still count and are still a big part of recruiting and retention. So that's the second piece of helping to boost the diversity hiring in your organization. The next question is, I'm getting stuck asserting myself when I'm in meetings, when I'm not sure how I fit in. How can I, assert my knowledge and expertise? It feels like I'm bragging and I'm not really used to that. I am used to kind of being a behind the scenes, more of like a servant leader type of model. So this was a really interesting conversation that I had with one of my coachees. And she was really, really struggling because she was invited to some of these big strategic discussions about changing the direction of the organization. And most of the people in that, on that discussion had more degrees, more experience, etc., than she did. And so she was really feeling like, I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do. And so I end up just sitting there not saying anything. So, in her own words, she was feeling some imposter syndrome. And my answer to that is very, very much, what I talked about in our Overcoming Imposter Syndrome training, which is that I believe you need to be truly fluent in your own skills and expertise in order to really navigate some of these tricky situations. And by fluent, what I mean is that, one, you need to really know what your skills and expertise and the accomplishments and contributions that you have made throughout your career. You need to be very clear on what those are, just in terms of, okay, I remember I did this, I remember I did that. And then you also need to own that your contributions, really believe internally that you did those things. And yes, you're typically part of a team. And yes, you weren't the only one, but until you really are willing to accept that you have done a lot of wonderful things, a lot of interesting things, a lot of impactful things throughout your career that have gotten you from, starting as a student to wherever you are now, you're going to struggle in these environments. And so once you have that, though, because you've written them all down and you continue to review them and you do whatever else you need to do to internalize them. Once you've done that, you'll realize that these sorts of meetings where you're not exactly sure, how you fit in, are really a pattern recognition exercise. Because when you can sit in these meetings and they'll be, they can be talking about a specific topic and you can think, oh, I've actually done something similar to that. And this is what worked and this is what didn't work. And that is how you contribute in those situations. And the other thing so that's the tactics of how to kind of get to being at a place where you can say those things. The other piece to it is a mindset shift that I want to make sure that everyone here gets, which is that speaking up and saying those things about what you've accomplished in the past, it's not bragging. It is service. You are serving your organization when you tell them what you've already done that's related to what they want to do. So it's helpful for them to understand so they can either do those things, whether they're specific activities or that you've done, specific action steps that you've taken, or maybe you, through doing similar work, you have a network of people who might be able to help. That's all critically important because they're struggling to try to execute something. And if you have information that can be helpful to them, it is very much a type of service to your organization. So it's not bragging, it is serving. Similarly, if you tried things in the past and they didn't work, that's also useful information. And that's also a service because then your organization can, avoid wasting the time and the money to do those things. So it's critically important that in your mind, even though you might feel like you're bragging, even though you feel strange about it, for the rest of the organization, it is a helpful service to learn what you know and what you can help with. So when you're sitting there and you're stuck, you can think about, okay, what have I done in the past that I might be able to bring to bear in this organization, in this conversation, excuse me, then speak up about it. That's really how you become a massively important contributor to your organization. First, you have to know what your skills and accomplishments are and be fluent in them, and then recognize I'm actually being helpful here. I'm actually serving my organization when I speak up about what I've done. Okay, the next question is, how do I foster a culture of innovation in my organization? So I'm going to use an example with my mom on this topic to hopefully illustrate this point about how to foster culture. And so the short answer is that you are really intentional about your behavior, your personal behavior, both in large opportunities when there's big stakes and big lots of eyes on it, but also in small, quiet, one-on-one interactions with people. When you're consistent throughout that spectrum, that is how you foster culture, because culture is about behavior. So the example I want to give you is with me and my mom. So my mom has been working with Canva a little bit. So Canva is a design software, and I posted some things about it, how I waste too much time working on it, working with that software, because it's just so fun to use. But my mom has been working on some quote cards for me. So we have a long list of quotes that we got from HubSpot, and we're taking a few of them and we're just making social media posts out of them. So I designed these social media posts and my mom is putting the quotes in them. And so I asked her to do that for really her first time working with this software. And after a couple of days, and she started working with it, she came back to me and said, "Hey, I've got an idea. You've got 3 different types of quotes, and you've given me 3 different color schemes of quote cards. What if I match them up? And for example, always put the team building quotes in yellow and always put the leadership quotes in white, etc." And so she went back, she thought about this, and she came up with an innovation. She came up with an idea. And so that is a small in scope, one-on-one, low stakes, in terms of impact on my business. The color scheme of social media posts is not going to make or break my business. It's a low stakes, small one-on-one interaction that is an opportunity to do something with culture. So as a leader, there's a couple different ways I could have answered that. I could have said, no, I don't want it that way. I mean, that could be something. On the other hand, I could say, I don't care. I mean, as I said, it's kind of low stake. So I don't really care. Do what you want. What I chose to do was to say, wow, that's a really great idea. Thanks so much for thinking of that. Let's try it. And so try that. And then the other thing I said, which didn't necessarily have anything to do with the color scheme, is I just said, why don't you just do like 3 of each, and let's actually test them out in the marketplace and see if people are reacting to these posts, because I don't want you to waste your time making 200 of these if it turns out that nobody actually likes them. So, but what I chose to do was say, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's try it. Thank you for thinking of it, because I am trying to foster a culture of innovation in my organization. And the way that you do that is through taking every opportunity to do that. And I think that while I don't expect a lot of you to say, no, that's a dumb idea, I do know that many leaders miss the opportunity and take the middle route, which is to say, I don't care, do whatever you want. Right? Because again, for me, in terms of the stakes of my business, it's not a high stakes conversation, but that would have been a missed opportunity, because for her, it was stepping outside of her comfort zone. It was raising an idea. And so for her, it was high stakes, even though for me in the business, it was not high stakes. And so if you really think about it, there's probably lots of opportunities where that is the case. There's just a disproportionate amount of, the level of priority, the level of stakes are different between you and the other people in your organization. But those are opportunities where you need to be paying attention to say, okay, how can I reinforce the culture here? Similarly, if something negative were to have happened, if someone behaved in a way that was antithetical to the culture that you were trying to reinforce, that you're trying to build in your organization, and you don't address it because it was small, that is another missed opportunity, because that is going to reinforce that, that it's okay to do these small things. And then soon you're going to eventually be coming up against, okay, where is this line? Where's the line for me? Where's the line for them? And so that's kind of the flip side, but an important point, that the culture is built around both these big high stakes things, but also just these small day-to-day behaviors. And so you need to be really intentional about how to reinforce those things. So the next question is, how do I handle disagreements that happen via email? And in particular, when you see like a bunch of people copied on an email and you don't agree with the person, how should you handle that? So I recommend that you immediately suggest that the conversation be moved offline via a different communication channel. So say, I think that's, you raise some good points, or you raise some interesting points, and I think this requires further conversation. Let's discuss this via phone, or discuss this in a meeting. And so that is very much a leadership move, I would call it, to recognize that the conversation is really probably not going to move forward via email, and that it needs to be addressed in a different communication channel. Now, I know that it can be hard to do that, and you're probably feeling very flustered because it seems like, and to some extent it is, this public fight, right? And so oftentimes I've been copied on some of these email chains, and you can just tell that people were really digging in and wanting to show that they're right and how the other person was wrong. And you get like different colored fonts, right? You can tell who's talking, and it just spirals into this big mess. And from a leader's perspective, I can tell you that I have never gotten copied on one of those, read through the chain, and tried to figure out who actually had the correct answer. I have never done that. I have never even cared about what the conversation or the fight was about. As a leader, what I was focused on was who was copied on this email chain. So first of all, I want to be sure that a customer, internal or external customer, has never been copied on one of these things, because it's highly unprofessional, but it also can spark confusion and cynicism with customers when they see experts, internally not agreeing on things. And so that's the first thing I'd want to make sure. And the second thing I'd be looking for is what other leaders or peers of mine or other leaders were copied on it, because really, if you were in my organization and you were contributing to this, this email fight, it just means damage control for me. It just means that I am going to have to figure out ways to mitigate whatever potential hostilities that arose, confusion and hostilities that arose with the parties involved because of this email chain. And so what I would typically have to do is find somebody in my organization who I felt probably could knows about the subject matter and the context, and say, okay, read through this thing, tell me what it says. I would be sending summary emails to my peers and other leaders, just, kind of summarizing what I think I know, and then also, suggesting whatever next steps need to be taken. So those, even though you may be in one of those fights and you're feeling like, oh my gosh, people are going to think I'm dumb, or I don't agree, or, they're making me look bad, that's probably what you're feeling. the reality situation is that leaders don't even care what you guys are talking about. And they're more concerned about damage control on the communications, the way it looks to customers and leaders and things like that. And so your best move really is to suggest that the whole thing be taken offline and discussed in a different channel. Not because you want to hide the conversation, but because it's never really going to move forward via email anyway. Email is not good for conversation and exchange. So it is the right thing to do from a, let's move this conversation forward. Let's actually come to resolution. So doing that in a conversation, it's the better way to do it. And it demonstrates your sensitivity to the fact that leaders are just going to have to, mash through all of that stuff and do damage control. And so if we see you saying, okay, let's take this offline, like, okay, yeah, they get it. And that's an important signal to leadership. The next question is that I'm struggling with work-life balance. What are your tips? So my main tip for scientists and engineers who are struggling with work-life balance is that you have all of the tools and skills you need to manage that because you've already gotten an extremely rigorous degree. You've maybe had to do some research or a big project. I mean, you've already had to address large and hard goals. And so what you learn the skills to do that. There's some goal setting skills. There's some planning and organizational skills. You may have had to ask for help. You probably had to manage your time and, get things done in between other priorities and things like that. So you really have already, you have everything you need to solve the work-life balance challenges. You just have to remember to apply those skills to other areas of your life. So whatever tools you use to be successful there are the same tools, and you really just need to kind of reflect on what works really well for you and what doesn't, and then think about, okay, well, how could I apply that into this different context? And I can't say that about everyone. I mean, there are lots of people who don't know or don't have experience going after big, challenging, kind of complex goals and figuring out how to get from point A to point B. I, for whatever reason, have this vivid memory of being invited to a big sales and procurement strategy session, early in my career. And I was really the only engineer there. And so, each person would get up and talk about their strategy and what they wanted to do. And then at the end, the VP of procurement said, okay, well, wow, this was such a great strategy session. He said, I wonder if there's a way that we could put all of these different strategies together and come up with and with each of the steps and the different activities that we need to do and show the timeline and roughly how long all of these things would take. And, everybody sort of looked around and was like, yeah, that'd be great. And I raised my hand and I was like, are you talking about a Gantt chart? One of the very basic engineering tools that we use. And it just seems like that was not something that they had really done before as an organization for whatever reason, was to really kind of arrange things and really plan things out and understand the critical tasks and understand, a lot of the things that are kind of basic project management for us. So we're not those people, right? We have done that. We do that now in our professional lives all the time. And now you just need to change it. You need to switch the context and remember. So, think of a project a goal or a project that you did at work that you thought went really well, that was really important to you, and think through what you used. What were the tools that you used? I was working with a woman a couple of weeks ago who was head of diversity and inclusion for one of the graduate programs at Georgia Tech. And she shared with me her strategy. She had a 5-year strategy on what she wanted to do to improve diversity and inclusion for the students in this program. And then after that, she said, but Angelique, I'm not spending enough time with my family, and I'm struggling, and I'm tired all the time. And I said, okay, so we've just gone through this high level strategy and plan, 5-year, 3-year, 2-year, 6 months, et cetera. I said, well, have you done that kind of plan for your personal life? And she said, no. And I said, well, why don't you take the weekend to do that and see what you can come up with? And she did. And, I think she was really happy with the outcome. So that is at the heart of it. My advice on work-life balance for people like us is to really just think about other big goals that you've accomplished and how you've done those, and what tools, skills, support network of people, what did you do then? And how can you take that over into your personal life? The next question is, I'm a new leader, and I don't have the strategy from my leadership. I've asked them a couple of times to kind of give me the high level strategy, and they haven't done it. And so because they haven't done it, I'm confused about what I should do. So how can I get leadership to be more forthcoming and communicate the strategy? So my first answer is that you can't. If they're not going to do it, they're not going to do it. And so the real answer is you have to figure out how to navigate and be effective given that constraint. And so I'll talk to you about how to do that. I know it's frustrating because all the business books, will tell you how important strategy is, how important communicating strategy is. And we've talked about it being challenging, and in previous Q&A calls, I've talked about how to communicate the vision and strategy. But it's just not something that a lot of leaders can do. So either it's not come from the very top, the CEO, they've not promulgated, or the director, provost, or chancellor, whatever it is in your organization, they've not cascaded anything down. Or they have, and it gets stuck. I think we all know that sometimes communication can get stuck with certain leaders who just don't value communication, or feel like they don't have time to do it. So it's not uncommon at all to be in this situation. So what you need to do is you need to estimate, based on the best information that you have, what you think the strategy is and what it means for your organization. And so you can get clues through the different meetings that you're in. You can try to read some, there may be reports, there may be press releases, there may be other communications that your leadership are giving, maybe externally, that can give you some clues to the strategy. And you need to just estimate based on that, based on what estimate what you think it really means for your organization and for you. And then you can try to get feedback on it. So you can be the one to summarize the vision and strategy at your level and communicate it to your leader and say, based on what we've talked about, this is what I've heard, and this is what I'm thinking about doing. Can you give me some feedback on it? And while many leaders are bad at actually crafting that vision themselves, many people are quite good at looking at something and giving feedback on it. And so if you're willing to do kind of the heavy lifting of putting something together because you need it yourself and getting feedback on it, you're quite likely to get really useful information that will help you move forward with what you need to do. So rather than expecting this high-level strategy to come from the top, from above you and down, you can draft something and push it up. And oftentimes you're much more likely to get the useful information that you need, which is what I'm planning to do aligned with the organizational goals as far as you know it? I mean, that's at the end of the day, the question you want answered. And so you would love somebody to tell you that, but they may not. So you may have to estimate it and get feedback on it. And then you can move forward. So that's my recommendation for that. So those were the questions that I had. And now I'm just going to move on to telling you what is coming up in the accelerator. So just a reminder, for December, we're going to have a little bit of a different month. So for the training, rather than do another video training, I am going to provide you with a gratitude journal. And it's just a fun, but I think important and impactful way to think about the year and start into the year and in a place of gratitude and enthusiasm and optimism. We will still have our live Q&A call. It will be Wednesday, December 21st. Just a note that I was looking at the dashboard, and the dashboard had the incorrect day of the week for December. It said Monday, December 21st, so it had the right date. But in fact, it will be our normal Wednesdays at noon Eastern. So with that, thank you for your patience for this not live, but this replay of the Q&A call. I still answered all of the questions. I hope you found it useful. And I'll see you next time. Take care.